Welcome to this episode of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and today we will be studying Madhya chapter 6, text 131, in the purport of which there is reference to Ādi chapter 7, texts 106 through 146. So we have switched over to that series, and we have done 6 episodes, and we covered from 106 to 127 so far, about 22 texts. We still have 19 to go. All right, so today we will be starting from 128 onwards. I have not shared this session anywhere on the socials because it is already late. So I request you to please share it in the WhatsApp groups and in the social media, and invite your friends. So all right, so we'll begin from 7.128 Ādi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome to today's Chaitanya Charitamrita session. We will be starting from Ādi chapter 7, text 128. And as I said in the beginning, this is from 6.131 Madhya, in the purport of which there is reference to Ādi 7.106 through 146, of which we have started from 106 and finished until 127. And that took us 6 episodes. And today we'll be starting from 7.128. All right. Pranava she mahavakya vediranidan Ishvara swarupa pranava sarva vishwadham. So we have gone through certain arguments in the previous session as well, and all these sessions. So today is another series of these arguments. Actually, maybe just a small recap. because okay, this series has started at 121, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Parinamavad. So, Parinamavad and Vivartavad. So, that is being explained, and 121 to 133, these verses explain the Parinamavad and Vivartavad. But we have kind of started on that and then explained quite a bit on that topic, and we are continuing on that same vein. And here, the stress on the primary and the secondary statements of the Vedas is being emphasized. Okay. So the Vedic sound vibration, Omkara, the principal word in the Vedic literatures, is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkara as the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. So here the Omkara, the Om syllable, is being stressed, and that is actually Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. Krishna says, I am Pranava, I am the Omkara. But Mayavadis, they go to the secondary things and secondary statements and highlight those instead of the primary. So we will understand. So here the importance of Omkara is explained. So it is a principal word in the Vedic literatures and is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkara as the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.13, the glories of Omkara are described as follows. Om ityekaksharam brahma vyaharan mamanusmaran yah prayati tyajandeham sayati paramam gatim. This verse indicates that Omkara or Pranava is a direct representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if at the time of death one simply remembers Omkara, he remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is therefore immediately transferred to the spiritual world. Omkara is the basic principle of all Vedic mantras, for it is the representation of Lord Krishna, understanding of whom is the ultimate goal of the Vedas, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyaham. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these simple facts explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and yet they are very proud of being Vedantis. Sometimes, therefore, we refer to the Vedanti philosophers as Vedantis, those who have no teeth. V means without, and Danti means possessing teeth. The statements of the Shankara philosophy, which are the teeth of the Mayavadi philosopher, are always broken by the strong arguments of Vaishnava philosophers, such as the great Acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya. Sripad Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya break the teeth of the Mayavadi philosophers, who can therefore be called Vedantis, toothless. As mentioned above, the transcendental vibration Omkara is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 13. Omityekaksharam brahma vyaharanmamanusmaran yah prayati tyajandeham sayati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. If one actually understands that Omkara is the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether one chants Omkara or the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the result is certainly the same. The transcendental vibration of Omkara is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 17. Pitahamasya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram Omkara riksamaya jurevacha. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rik, the Sama, and the Yajurvedas. Similarly, the transcendental sound Om is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 23. Om Tatsaditi Nirdesho Brahmanastrividha Smritah Brahmanastena Vedascha Yajñascha Vihitaha Pura. From the beginning of creation, the three syllables Om Tat Sat have been used to indicate the supreme absolute truth, Brahman. They were uttered by Brahmanas while chanting Vedic hymns and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Throughout all the Vedic literatures, the glories of Omkara are specifically mentioned. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his thesis Bhagavat Sandarbha, says that in the Vedic literature, Omkara is considered to be the sound vibration of the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only this vibration of transcendental sound can deliver a conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. Sometimes Omkara is also called the deliverer, Tara. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the Omkara vibration, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Therefore, Omkara has been described by the great commentator Sridhara Swami as Tarankura, the seed of deliverance from the material world. Since the Supreme Godhead is absolute, His holy name and His sound vibration Omkara are as good as He Himself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the holy name or Omkara, the transcendental representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has all the potencies of the Personality of Godhead. Nam Namakari Bahudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smaranena Kala. All potencies are invested in the holy vibration of the holy name of the Lord. There is no doubt that the holy name of the Lord or Omkara is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. In other words, anyone who chants Omkara and the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, immediately meets the Supreme Lord directly in His sound form. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is clearly stated that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, personally appears before the chanter who engages in chanting the Ashtakshara or 8-syllable mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. A similar statement in the Mandukya Upanishad declares that whatever one sees in the spiritual world is all an expansion of the spiritual potency of Omkara. On the basis of all the Upanishads, Srila Jiva Goswami says that Omkara is the supreme absolute truth and is accepted as such by all the acharyas and authorities. Omkara is beginningless, changeless, supreme, and free from deterioration and external contamination. Omkara is the origin, middle, and end of everything, and any living entity who thus understands Omkara attains the perfection of spiritual identity in Omkara. Omkara, being situated in everyone's heart, is Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddesherjuna Tishtati. Omkara is as good as Vishnu because Omkara is as all pervasive as Vishnu. One who knows Omkara and Lord Vishnu to be identical no longer has to lament or hanker. One who chants Omkara no longer remains a Shudra, but immediately comes to the position of a Brahmana. Simply by chanting Omkara, one can understand the whole creation to be one unit or an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Idam hi vishvam bhagavanivetaro yato jagatsthan nirodha sambhavaha. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is Himself this cosmos, and still He is aloof from it. From Him only this cosmic manifestation has emanated, in Him it rests, and unto Him it enters after annihilation. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.20, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.20, although one who does not understand concludes otherwise, Srimad Bhagavatam states that the entire cosmic manifestation is but an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Realization of this is possible simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, Omkara. One should not, however, foolishly conclude that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is omnipotent, We have manufactured a combination of letters A, O, and M to represent him. Factually, the transcendental sound Omkara, although a combination of the three letters A, U, and M, has transcendental potency, and one who chants Omkara will very soon realize Omkara and Lord Vishnu to be non-different. Krishna declares, Pranavaha Sarva Vedeshu, I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, Bhagavad Gita 7.8. One should therefore conclude that among the many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Omkara is the sound incarnation. All the Vedas accept this thesis. One should always remember that the holy name of the Lord and the Lord Himself are always identical. Abhinnatvan namanaminoho. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 17.133. Since Omkara is the basic principle of all Vedic knowledge, it is uttered before one begins to chant any Vedic hymn. Without Omkara, no Vedic mantra is successful. The Goswamis therefore declare that Pranava, Omkara, is the complete representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they have analyzed Omkara in terms of its alphabetical constituents as follows. Akarenochyate Krishnah sarvalokaikanayakah Ukarenochyate Radha Makaro Jivavachakah. Omkara is a combination of the letters A, U, and M. Akarenochyate Krishna. The letter A, Akara, refers to Krishna, who is Sarvalokaikanayaka, the master of all living entities and planets, material and spiritual. Nayaka means leader. He is the supreme leader. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Kathopanishad 2.2.13. Now, before we go further, there is Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita also, (10.33), Krishna says, Aksharanam akarosmi. So he says, of letters, I am the letter A. A is in English, but actually it's A. So, Akara is the first letter of the Sanskrit alphabet, is the beginning of the Vedic literature. Without Akara, nothing can be sounded, therefore it is the beginning of sound. Actually, this is true. I have explained in my Shloka learning course 6 years ago, in the second video of the 7-video series, the signs of the Sanskrit alphabet. It is, I think, to date, the most attended live stream of mine. We had about 100 viewers at one time. At one point in that lecture. 100 concurrent viewers. That's a big achievement for me. So, in that video, I have explained the sound of the signs of the Sanskrit alphabet, and every single sound that comes out of our mouth starts with A. A is the purest sound, and every other sound is a manipulation of the voice, the larynx, and the entire voice system of our mouth. By manipulating the shape, we let out different sounds, either by stopping or by constricting the voice passage. So, A is the original sound. So here in this way also it is Akarosmi, Aksharanam Akarosmi. Now in the Om, A, U and M. A is said to be Krishna. Akarenochyate Krishna. The letter A refers to Krishna, who is Sarvalokaikanayaka. Sarvaloka means all planets, material and spiritual. Eka Nayaka, the singular one leader. Nayaka means leader. So Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetanam. So Nityaha is singular, Nityanam is plural. Chetanaha is singular, Chetananam is plural. Chetanaha, Chetananam. Sandhi, when they join together, it becomes Chetanas Chetananam. If you separate them, it is Chetanaha, Chetananam. So Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. The letter U, Ukara, indicates Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Krishna, and Makara, indicates the living entities, Jivas. Thus, Om is the complete combination of Krishna, his potency, and his eternal servitors. In other words, Omkara represents Krishna, his name, fame, pastimes, entourage, expansions, um, devotees, potencies, and everything else pertaining to him. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu states in the present verse of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarva Vishwa Dhama. Omkara is the resting place of everything, just as Krishna is the resting place of everything. Brahmano hi pratisthaham. The Mayavadi philosophers consider many Vedic mantras to be the Mahavakya or principal Vedic mantra, such as Tattvamasi, Chandogyopanishad 6.8.7, Idam Sarvam Yadayam Atma, and Brahmedam Sarvam from Brihadaranyaka 2.5.1, Atmaivedam Sarvam from Chandogyopanishad 7.25.2, Neha Nanasti Kinchana Kathopanishad 2.1.11. That is a great mistake. Only Omkara is the Mahavakya. All these other mantras that the Mayavadis accept as the Mahavakya are only incidental. They cannot be taken as the Mahavakya or Mahamantra. The mantra Tattvamasi indicates only a partial understanding of the Vedas, unlike Omkara, which represents the full understanding of the Vedas. Therefore, the transcendental sound that includes all Vedic knowledge is Omkara, Pranava. Aside from Omkara, none of the words uttered by the followers of Shankaracharya can be considered the Mahavakya. They are merely passing remarks. Shankaracharya, however, has never stressed chanting of the Mahavakya Omkara. He has accepted only Tattvamasi as the Mahavakya. Imagining the living entity to be God, he has misrepresented all the mantras of the Vedānta Sutra with the motive of proving that there is no separate existence of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. This is similar to the politician's attempt to prove non-violence from the Bhagavad Gita. The politician's attempt. He did not name him, referring to Gandhi. Krishna is violent to demons, and to attempt to prove that Krishna is not violent is ultimately to deny Krishna. As such, explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd. That's a wrong pause. As such explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd. You see the difference of how much difference it makes depending on where you pause. As such, explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd. That gives a totally different meaning. As such explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd, that gives another totally different meaning of the Bhagavad Gita, of the sentence. So you see, important how we read it. As such explanations of the Bhagavad Gita are absurd, so also is Shankaracharya's explanation of the Vedānta Sutra. And no sane and reasonable man will accept it. At present, however, the Vedānta Sutra is misrepresented not only by the so-called Vedantis, but also by other unscrupulous persons who are so degraded that they even recommend that sannyasis eat meat, fish and eggs. This is Ramakrishna Mission. In this way, the so-called followers of Shankara, the impersonalist Mayavadis, are sinking lower and lower. How can these degraded men explain the Vedanta Sutra, which is the essence of all Vedic literature? Why does the... Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has declared Mayavadi Bhashya Sunile Hoy Sarvan Nash. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 6.169. Anyone who hears commentary on the Vedanta Sutra from the Mayavada school is completely doomed. As explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa Sarvair Ahameva Vedyah. All Vedic literature aims at understanding Krishna. Mayavada philosophy, however, has deviated everyone from Krishna. Therefore, there is a great need for the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world to save the world from degradation. Every intelligent and sane man must abandon the philosophical explanation of the Mayavadis and accept the explanation of Vaishnava Acharyas. One should read Bhagavad Gita as it is to try to understand the real purport of the Vedas. Okay, so that is quite self-explanatory. So we have also gone into the explanation of the four Mahavakyas that are mainly used by Mayavadis and how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained that the Trinadapi Sunichena verse, which is which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur touts as the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahavakya, it subsumes all the other four Mahavakyas mentioned by the Mayavadis, which is Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Anandam Brahma, and Ekamevadvitiyam. So all of that are contained within the Trinadapi Sunichena verse, and as Bhagavad Gita says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. So with Vidya comes Vinamrita. That means gentleness, humility. So with Vidya, just like the fruits of a tree, if they're heavy, the branches may even bend. So like that, with heavy knowledge, one should actually bend in humility. But the so-called puffed up Mayavadis who read a lot of scripture and who can quote many things, but the end is they're not gentle, they're not humble, they're very, very proud. They want to become one with God. Whereas the devotee wants to be a humble servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, they want to become Krishna. So this is the opposite result of what Vidya does. Vidya will give rise to Vinaya or Vinamrita. But if Vidya does not give rise to Vinamrita in the person or the gentleness or humility, then that is not Vidya, that is Avidya or Mayaya Pahrita Jnana, the knowledge stolen by Maya, illusion. So it is actually Avidya in the garb of Vidya. So real Vidya, a person actually becomes humble. And we have explained in our previous session, you can go and watch if you have forgotten how we have explained. I mean, we have not explained, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained, and I just repeated that. So one can go back and study that in that episode. So apart from that, everything else is self-explanatory in this purport. So Prabhupada gave so many references here of the importance of Omkara and what it represents. You know, there are many Hindus who, I have seen this quote many times thrown around. Om has 700 over meanings, and you can choose which meaning you want, and that it will mean that to you. Nonsense. It is their colored interpretations, maybe, but real Omkara. Krishna says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. I am Omkara. No. And many times he has said that. And the Goswamis also explained what is A, U, and Ma. How it is. Because in our Hare Krishna Mahamantra, if we understand this, Akarenochyate Krishna Sarvalokaika Ukarenochyate Radha Makaro Jiva Vachaka. So if we understand A to be Krishna, U to be Radha, and Ma to be living entities, how is it different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra? It is not. It is not different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra because Hare is Radharani, Krishna is Krishna, Rama is Krishna. Now, where is Jiva in all of that? Well, the chanter who is chanting, he is begging for service to Radha and Krishna. So, the Jiva is already there. The person who's chanting is the Jiva and he's begging for the service of Radha and Krishna. So, Everything is included in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But Prabhupada also mentioned, I think in one of the purports as well, but many times even in the audio, in his spoken conversations and lectures, that Omkara is usually chanted by Mayavadis, and it gives a very impersonal, people don't really understand. The Goswamis explained as Krishna, Radha and the living entities, but um, ordinary people, they take it to be impersonal. So therefore, we as devotees, although Om and Hare Krishna are non-different, we are strictly personalists without any ambiguity. So we don't want ambiguity in our mantra, because mantra means to meditate on the meaning. And even to a person who does not understand the meaning, immediately he should remember Krishna. So that is why the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is very much necessary. It's personal, it's not impersonal. Although Om is also personal, but it is mainly understood to be impersonal. But Hare Krishna is much more direct. Alright, so next. सर्वाश्रय ईश्वरेर प्रणव उद्देश तत्त्वमसि वाक्य होय वेदेर एकदेश. It is the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to present Pranava, Omkar, as the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. The words Tat, Tvam, Asi are only a partial explanation of the Vedic knowledge. Yes, this is qualitative oneness but not quantitative. So, purport, Tattvamasi means you are the same spiritual identity. We are qualitatively one with God, but not quantitatively. Pranava Mahavakyataha Koriyachhadan Mahavakya Kori Tattvamasira Sthapana. Pranava, Omkara, is the Mahavakya, Mahamantra in the Vedas. Shankaracharya's followers covered this to stress without authority the mantra Tattvamasi. Purport. The Mayavadi philosophers stress the statements Tattvamasi, Soham, etc., but they do not stress the real Mahamantra, Pranava, Omkara. Therefore, because they misrepresent Vedic knowledge, they are the greatest offenders to the lotus feet of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says clearly, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadhi. Mayavadi philosophers are the greatest offenders to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna declares, Tanaham dvishatah kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipamya jasram ashubhan asurishveva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among mankind, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Life in demoniac species awaits the Mayavadi philosophers after death because they're envious of Krishna. Now, why is it envious of Krishna? Because to misrepresent the Vedas is to come in the guise of a follower of the Vedas but then misrepresent it. That is worse than saying that I don't follow the Vedas. To come in the form of a follower of the Vedas, but extract another whole meaning out of it and misrepresent it, that is very, very deceptive, duplicitous. And that's why Mayavadam Asatshastram Prachanna Bauddham Uchyate. So Prachanna Bauddham means hidden Buddhism. Buddhism is honest, frank atheism. Vedas are rejected and God is rejected. In the Mayavad philosophy, Vedas are accepted, God is also accepted, but that God is nothing but. He does not have any form, he does not have any attributes, he does not have any qualities, nothing. Neti, neti, neti. In other words, you're saying there is no God. If you say God, there is God, but he has no name, he has no qualities, he has no attributes, he has no form, nothing, then who is that? What is that? So, and then saying that I am Krishna, well, that is the beginning of our material life. We started with that same desire that I want to be Krishna. I want to be the Supreme Lord here. And if we come back to that understanding that, oh, I am equal to Krishna, then we have restarted, we have come back to the starting point of our ignorance. So, therefore, this is very, very offensive. So, life in demoniac species awaits the Mayavadi philosophers after death because they're envious of Krishna. When Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 9:34, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. One demoniac scholar says that it is not Krishna to whom one must surrender. This scholar is already suffering in this life and he will have to suffer again in the next if in this life he does not complete his prescribed suffering. One should be very careful not to be envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who was the first president of India, Sanskrit scholar, wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. This is his understanding. That it is not to Krishna that we have to surrender, but to the inside, the soul within Krishna, the Brahma, the Brahman within Krishna. He did not understand the very simple fact that there is no difference between inside and outside of Krishna. One should be very careful not to be envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the next verse, therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clearly states the purport of the Vedas. 7.131 सर्व वेद सूत्रे करे कृष्णेर अभिधान मुख्य वृत्ति छाड़ी कोइल लक्षणा व्याख्यान. Again, technical terms, abhidhan, mukhya vritti and lakshana vritti. Mukhya vritti and lakshana vritti. You see, mukhya vritti is direct interpretation and lakshana vritti is indirect interpretation or explanation. In all the Vedic sutras and literatures, it is Lord Krishna who is to be understood. But the followers of Shankaracharya have covered the real meaning of the Vedas with indirect explanations. In the English, the importance of the technical term Mukhya Vritti and Lakshana Vritti becomes less because it is just mentioned like direct and indirect. But these are very technical terms, Mukhya Vritti and Lakshana Vritti. I have explained this in a previous episode in the same series of understanding Vedanta philosophy. You can refer, I think, to the first or second video probably. So, purport. It is said, Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tatha Ādavante Cha Madhye Cha Harihi Sarvatra Giyate. In the Vedic literature, including the Ramayana, the Puranas, and Mahabharata, from the very beginning, Ādau, to the end, Antecha, as well as within the middle, Madhyecha, only Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. In our book, Why Worship Only Krishna, we have actually found the reference to this, the exact reference. Let me bring it out. I think it's in few places, but is not here. I thought we quoted this. Vedānta. That's interesting. We did not quote this. It was definitely in the list of verses that we were preparing in the manuscript. I need to check that again. I think, let me see. The Vedic scriptures 37. Definitely it's not here. So I can understand probably why, because probably it was becoming very long and we limited kind of the number of references we wanted to quote. We definitely took out some of those. So I think this was one of the verses that was taken out. But there's a very important verse. There were so many important verses, and then even as a verse as important as this, we kind of took it out to make space for other verses, which were even more stronger and conclusive. All right, so, but I think we did take a note in one of the documents where we found it. All right, so moving on. स्वतः प्रमाण वेद प्रमाण शिरोमणि लक्षणा कोरिले स्वतः प्रमाणता हानि. स्वतः प्रमाण वेद प्रमाण शिरोमणि लक्षणा कोरिले स्वतः प्रमाणता हानि. The self-evident Vedic literatures are the highest evidence of all. But if these literatures are interpreted, their self-evident nature is lost. It is mentioned Harivamsha, Bhavishyat Parva, 13-95. 132 or 95. Yes, I think Harivamsha is where we found it. Cited in Tattvavit yes. All right, so the self-evident Vedic literatures are the highest evidence of all. But if these literatures are interpreted, their self-evident nature is lost. Purport. We quote Vedic evidence to support our statements. But if we interpret it according to our own judgment, the authority of the Vedic literature is rendered imperfect or useless. In other words, by interpreting the Vedic version, one minimizes the value of Vedic evidence. When one quotes from Vedic literature, it is understood that the quotations are authoritative. How can one bring the authority under his own control and explain in whatever way they want? They can't do that. We can't do that. That is a case of principiis obsta. Obsta. That is a very interesting word. Okay, we're going to principiis obsta. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Principiis obsta. Is a Latin phrase that translates to resist the beginnings or withstand the first approaches. Originating from the Roman poet Ovid's work Remedia Amoris, it serves as a maxim advising that potential problems or threats must be addressed at their earliest stages to prevent them from escalating. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Prabhupada used Such an obscure term is not even there in the dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, online dictionary. How to even pronounce it? Let me. Oh, classical pronunciation and ecclesiastical pronunciation. Principiis obsta. Principiis obsta or principiis. Principiis obsta. The Romans would have said principiis obsta. But the Catholic Church, the traditional pronunciation used by the Catholic Church and often found in legal or musical contexts, is principiis obsta. Principiis. Okay, no, so it's not principiis. Principiis obsta. That's very interesting. That is very interesting. Principiis obsta. Again, what it is? It serves as a maxim that advising that potential problems or threats must be addressed at their earliest stages to prevent them from escalating. So, why did Prabhupada say that it is principiis obsta? Because if we do that, then everything else that follows will be a problem, because the very authority is now questionable because of our interpretations. Because the words of the Vedas should be taken as they are, and that is the standard. But if I now change the standard by my own interpretations, now if I support my ideas with that interpreted or changed or distorted version of the distorted interpretation, if it is based on distorted interpretation of Vedas, then everything becomes distorted. So the problems will further escalate. It's like Prabhupada explained in a mathematical problem solving. If in the first step I get the result wrong, and based on that, even if I get every other step right, but because I have taken the result from the first step and then worked on it and then applied all the formula and the steps, so even if the rest of the steps are right, the answer is going to be terribly wrong because the first step is wrong. Principiis obsta. Potential problems or threats must be addressed at their earliest stages to prevent them from escalating. That is a case of principiis obsta. Alright, so I learned a new word today. এই মত প্রতিসূত্রে সহজার্থ ছাড়িয়া গৌণার্থ ব্যাখ্যা করে কল্পনা করিয়া. To prove their philosophy, the members of the Mayavada school have given up the real, easily understood meaning of the Vedic literature and introduced indirect meanings based on their imaginative powers. They used their imaginative powers and came up with indirect meanings. Purport. Unfortunately, the Shankarite interpretation has covered almost the entire world. Therefore, there is a great need to present the original, easily understood natural import of the Vedic literature. We have therefore begun by presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we propose to present all the Vedic literature in terms of the direct meaning of its words. Very interesting. Prabhupada wanted to present all the Vedic literature in terms. In fact, in the one of the previous verses, we have seen that Prabhupada wanted the Vedānta Sutra to be, he wanted to translate the Vedānta Sutra as well and go deep into the the misrepresentations of Shankaracharya, misrepresentations of the Vedas, Vedic statements by Shankaracharya. All right. এই মতে প্রতি সূত্রে করে না দূষণ শুনি চমৎকার হইল সন্ন্যাসীর গণ. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus showed for each and every sutra the defects in Shankaracharya's explanations, all the assembled Mayavadi sannyasis were struck with wonder. Sakala sannyasi kohe sunoh Shripad, tumi je khandile artha ena he vivad. All the Mayavadi sannyasis said, Your Holiness, kindly know from us that we actually have no quarrel with your refutation of these meanings, for you have given a clear understanding of the sutras. Acharya kalpita artha iha sabhe jani, sampradaya anurodhe tabutaha mani. We know that all this word jugglery springs from the imagination of Shankaracharya, and yet, because we belong to this sect, we accept it although it does not satisfy us. Party spirit. Just because I'm in this party, I have to accept it although it does not satisfy me. And that's what Shankaracharya's followers have compromised with. मुख्यार्थ व्याख्या करो देखी तुम्हार बल मुख्यार्थे लागाल प्रभु सूत्र सकल. Now let us see, the Mayavadi sannyasis continued, how well you can describe the sutras in terms of their direct meaning. Hearing this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his direct explanation of the Vedānta Sutra. Brihadvastu Brahma kahi Shri Bhagavan Shadvidhaishwarya Purna Paratatvadham. Brahman, who is greater than the greatest, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is full in 6 opulences and therefore he is the reservoir of ultimate truth and absolute knowledge. Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that the absolute truth is understood in 3 phases of realization: the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma are expansions of the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is complete in 6 opulences, namely wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Since he possesses his 6 opulences, the personality of Godhead is the ultimate truth in absolute knowledge. Vadanti Tattvavit dāsa yajñānam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti shabdyate. So it is advayam, it is one singular Brahman, one singular absolute truth, but tattva, it is one tattva, but it is understood in 3 phases according to the advancement of the practitioner. So Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. स्वरूप ऐश्वर्य तार नाही माया गंध सकल वेदेर होय भगवान से संबंध. In his original form, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full with transcendental opulences which are free from the contamination of the material world. It is to be understood that in all Vedic literature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal. Now, these Shadaishwarya, because he is saying, let's go back. So he said, now let us see how well you can describe in direct. So Brihad Vastu, Brahma Kahi Shri Bhagavan. The substance which is greater than the greatest. Brihad means great. Brihad Mridanga, the greater Mridanga. So Brahman, we call Shri Bhagavan. Shat Vidha Aishwarya Purna Paratatvadham. Now where is the, okay, he's just saying, but where is the Vedic statement, Vedic evidence of this, that Brahman means actually Bhagavan who has six opulences. Where is he getting that from? So, in the Vishnu Puran 6.5.74, Parashar Muni describes Bhagavan. So, Vishnu Puran has this statement: Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasah shriyah yashasah shriyah jnana vairagyayoschaiva shannam bhaga itingana. So, that is a verse which says that Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the person with six opulences. In that particular verse, Bhagavan is defined, and two verses later, I'll just actually take it out. We quoted in this book. '65. Okay, you see, 6.5.74 and 76. Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasah shriyah jnana vairagyayoschaiva shannam bhaga itingana. एवमेव एवमेष महाशब्दो भगवानिति सत्तम परम ब्रह्म भूतस्य वासुदेवस्य नान्यतः. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is defined as one who is full in six opulences, who has full strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. This great word Bhagavan is applicable only to Vasudeva, Krishna, who is the Supreme Brahman and no one else. So, it's very clear. So, on that basis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying these statements. स्वरूप ऐश्वर्य तार नाही माया गंध सकल वेदेर होय भगवान से संबंध. In his original form, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full with the transcendental opulences, which are free from the contamination of the material world. It is to be understood that in all Vedic literature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal. तारे निर्विशेष कहे चिच्छक्ति नामानि अर्ध स्वरूप नामानि ले पूर्णता होय हानि. When we speak of the Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the whole. So, impersonal aspect of the Supreme, it is there, it is not false, but it is only partial understanding, very vague understanding of the Supreme. So, purport. In the Upanishads, it is stated, Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Ishopanishad invocation. This verse, which is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and many other Upanishads, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in six opulences. His position is unique, for he possesses all riches, strength, influence, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Brahman means the greatest, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is greater than the greatest. Just as the sun globe is greater than the sunshine, which is all pervading in the universe. Although the sunshine that spreads all over the universe appears very great to the less knowledgeable, greater than the sunshine is the sun itself, and greater than the sun is the sun god. Similarly, impersonal Brahman is not the greatest, although it appears to be so. Impersonal Brahman is only the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the transcendental form of the Lord is greater than both the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. Brahman and therefore, whenever the word Brahman is used in the Vedic literature, it is understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's a comment 6547, not 74. No, it is 74, not 47. In one of the Prabhupada's books, it is mentioned 47, I think in the Science of Self-Realization, and that is wrong. That is a typo. It is 74. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is also addressed as Parabrahman. Mayavadis and others sometimes misunderstand Brahman because, one second, yes, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. Mayavadis and others sometimes misunderstand Brahman because every living entity is also Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is referred to as Parabrahman, the Supreme Brahman. In the Vedic literature, whenever the words Brahman or Parabrahman are used, they are to be understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. This is their real meaning. Since the entire Vedic literature deals with the subject of Brahman, Krishna is therefore the ultimate goal of Vedic understanding. The impersonal Brahma Jyoti rests on the personal form of the Lord. Brahmano hi pratisthaham, 1426 Bhagavad Gita. The impersonal Brahma Jyoti rests on the personal form of the Lord. Therefore, although the impersonal effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti, is the first realization, one must enter into it, as mentioned in the Ishopanishad, to find the Supreme Person, and then one's knowledge is perfect. Where is that Ishopanishad mantra? It is the 15th. Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam poshanna pavrano satya dharmaya drishtaye. Mukham means face. So, O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So we should penetrate the Brahma Jyoti and go to the source of that, which is Krishna himself. Therefore, although the impersonal effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti, is the first realization, one must enter into it, as mentioned in the Ishopanishad, to find the Supreme Person, and then one's knowledge is perfect. The Bhagavad Gita 7.19 also confirms this. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. One's search for the absolute truth by dint of speculative knowledge is complete. When one comes to the point of understanding Krishna and surrenders unto him, that is the real point of perfectional knowledge. So you see, jnanavan mam prapadyate. So when one has perfect knowledge, then he surrenders to Krishna, understanding Krishna to be everything. Partial realization of the absolute truth as impersonal Brahman denies the complete opulences of the Lord. This is a hazardous understanding of the absolute truth. Unless one accepts all the features of the absolute truth, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's knowledge is imperfect. Because opulences can be owned by a person. So Brahma Jyoti, if it is just impersonal, then there is no opulence there. Where is the beauty? Where is the knowledge? Only a sentient person can have knowledge. Sentience cannot just be not a person. Sentient means person. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Nityaha and Chetanaha, that singular eternal conscious person, is the provider for all the rest of the infinite eternal and conscious persons. And all of them are eternal and conscious. They never become one. If it is Nitya and Nityanam, they are ever forever Nitya and Nityanam. It is not that now Nityanam, now later they become Nityaha. Then that Nitya word itself loses importance, loses meaning, because Nitya means eternal. If they are eternally separate beings, then they will be eternally so. And this singular eternal person will remain the singular eternal, eternally. So eternal, the word eternal has meaning. Words have meanings. It may be surprising, but words do have meanings. The so much is misunderstood when one word is used for another. A word has a meaning and it has to be used in only in that sense. Why should we use the word Sanatana or Nitya for something that is not Nitya? How is it Nitya? How are we Nitya if we and at one point of time, if we merge into the absolute truth, if we become one with the absolute truth, if we coalesce, coalesce? Coalesce means like two drops of water and then they become one. They join together and become one. That is coalesce. So how can we coalesce and at the same time be Nitya? So it doesn't make sense. The word does not hold meaning anymore. So words have meaning and it has to be consistent. Otherwise, language itself breaks down. So those people who say that, oh, I'm a proud follower of Sanatan Dharma. Sanatana means what? You have to question that. Eternal. And what is eternal? Antavattu phalam tesham, demigods are not eternal. So only Krishna is eternal. So our relationship with Krishna is eternal. So there is the very definition of Sanatana Dharma. But because the words are misunderstood, words are misrepresented, contorted meanings out of the words are made. So therefore we have this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding comes from misrepresentation of the words. Definitions are distorted. That's where the problem starts. Principi is obsta. Principi is obsta. So if we nip it in the bud, as they say, if we nip it in the bud, if we nip the problem in the bud, then that means if we set right the definitions of the words, everything that follows will make sense. Everything that follows will make sense. All right. So, and it is so rampant in today's society. Words are just used without any meaning. Even big politicians are using, world politicians are using this. They're throwing around words without any meaning. So, reading on, one's search for the absolute truth by dint of speculative knowledge is complete when one comes to the point of understanding Krishna and surrenders unto him. That is the real point of perfectional knowledge. Partial realization of the absolute truth as impersonal Brahman denies the complete opulences of the Lord. This is a hazardous understanding of the absolute truth. Unless one accepts all the features of the absolute truth, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's knowledge is imperfect. Shripad Ramanujacharya in his Vedārtha Sangraha says, Jnanena dharmena swarupamopi nirupitam natu jnanamatram brahmeti kathamidam avagamyate. He thus indicates that the real identity of the absolute truth must be understood in terms of both his knowledge and his characteristics. Simply to understand the absolute truth to be full of knowledge is not sufficient. In the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad 119, we find the statement, Yah sarvajnah sarvavit, which means that the absolute truth knows everything perfectly, but we also learn from the Vedic description, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. This is from the Katha Upanishad, quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 1365 purport, that not only does he know everything, but he also acts accordingly by utilizing his different energies. And the word there is used just before Parasya Shakti Vividhaiva Shruyate, after this. Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriya Cha. Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriya Cha. So, automatically, Swabhaviki means by his natural desire, Jnana, Bala, and Kriya automatically happens with his Shaktis. So, usually, when we have to be successful in anything, we have to first have Jnana. Jnana means to know how to do it. But then, knowing itself is not enough. There has to be Bala. We have to have the capacity. Either the capital or the time or whatever. We should have sufficient means to act. So even if we have knowledge and sufficient means, if there is no kriya or endeavor, then we cannot achieve, right? So, like for example, if one wants to exercise, if one wants to do push-ups, for example, he must know how to do push-ups. Okay, he can see a video and then, okay, understand. Then he has to create capacity. He has to have capacity, whether I have time or not in the day or something. Or do I train with a proper, what is that, a personal trainer? Do I have the means for that, the time, the money, all of that? Even if I have both, if I actually do not do the push-ups, kriya, then I cannot get the exercise done. So I have to have, this is a very simple example, crude example, but in anything, if business, jnana, you have to have market research, you have to know how to do it and what is the need of the customer. You got to know, you have to have a knowledge of the field and how to do it. Then you have to have capital, you have to have sufficient money and sufficient, if you have money, you can get probably, workforce and everything. All of that is needed, and machinery and all of that equipment, or sometimes it is software coding, or you need server, whatever, all those things you need. So you need to have bala. So there has to be jnana, there has to be bala, then there has to be kriya, there has to be endeavor, and then yes, you will have a business, you have something going on. But Krishna, swabhaviki jnana bala kriya cha, automatically it is happening. The jnana bala kriya, he does not have to now research and find out, and then he has to gather resources, and then he has to endeavor in order to achieve something. No, just by his desiring, sa aikshata, sa asrajata. By glancing over the material creation, by glancing over material energy, he brought forth the entire creation. So, swabhaviki jnana bala kriya, parasya shakti vividhaiva shruta. So so Ramanujacharya is saying in his Vedārtha Sangraha, jnanena dharmena swarupam api nirupitam natu jnanamatram brahmeti kathamidam avagamyate. It thus indicates that the real identity of the absolute truth must be understood in terms of both his knowledge and his characteristics. Simply to understand the absolute truth to be full of knowledge is not sufficient. In the Vedic literature Mundaka Upanishad 119, we find the statement Yaha Sarvajnah Sarvavit, which means that the absolute truth knows everything perfectly. In the Bhagavatam first verse also, Abhijnaha. Abhijnaha means he knows everything. But we also learn from the Vedic description, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate, that not only does he know everything, but he also acts accordingly by utilizing his different energies. Thus, to understand that Brahman, the Supreme, is conscious is not sufficient. One must know how he consciously acts through his different energies. Mayavada philosophy simply informs us of the consciousness of the absolute truth, but does not give us information of how he acts with his consciousness. That is the defect of that philosophy. See, these are the arguments we need to develop. We need to understand. That's why it is good to actually take notes and revisit this thing over and over again, so that we become very sharp in our points of rebuttal. All right. So, you see, conscious, I can be conscious, well, mentally, maybe physically not. I can be paralyzed and be conscious. Of course, if something is touched, maybe I cannot respond and there's no feeling. But I may be conscious of, at least mentally, I may be conscious, but I may not be able to do anything. So, absolute truth is not paralyzed. He's fully active, and we have to know how he acts through his different energies, his material energy, his spiritual energy, his marginal energy. So, by studying his energies, everything about him, then we begin to understand him. That's what the Bhagavatam is um, describing. In the second canto, first chapter, all those verses, the 10 subjects of the Bhagavatam are mentioned, and all the 9 are his energies, transformations of his energies. But the 10th subject is the summum bonum, the personality of Godhead himself. So, unless we understand his energies, we cannot understand him. For example, if we see a man on the street, we cannot understand him, his position. But when he starts speaking, if we see him in his office, which is maybe a massive building, or his house, which is a massive palace, and he has many servants, big business, and his car, when we see his car, when we understand his status. When we see his watch or dress or something that may indicate, sometimes they may not wear expensive stuff. But when you go see his office, how many people are working under him? By seeing his opulence, we understand his position and how well he speaks, what is his convictions, what are his thoughts. Unless he displays some energy, we cannot know him. Just by seeing a person, we cannot really understand. Similarly, Krishna cannot be understood. Krishna cannot be understood if his energies are not understood, and that's the reason why the 9 subjects of Bhagavatam are first explained, and only in the 10th canto, the 10th subject, Krishna, is discussed. Okay. That's why you see in the Bhagavatam, all the 9, the creation, the planetary systems, the demons, and how Krishna comes and protects, all of that. So we get an idea of how great Krishna actually is. It's not enough to understand that God is great, but we need to understand how great God actually is. So that will be understood by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, and then only can we really appreciate the supreme absolute truth. All right, we are approaching the end of the whole series. 146 is the last, right? So we're at 140 finished, now 141st. I think we'll try to finish everything in this session. भगवान प्राप्ति है तुझे करे उपाय, श्रवणादि भक्ति कृष्ण प्राप्तिर सहाय. It is only by devotional service, beginning with hearing, that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the only means to approach him. It's a very important point. Shravanadi. Bhagavan prapti hetu je kore upay Shravanadi bhakti Krishna praptir sahai. So Shravanadi. It is only by devotional service, beginning with hearing. You know what the Mayavadis do not do? They don't hear. They see the word and they try to explain it. Hear first what Krishna has to say. Listen to that. In any discussion or an argument or a debate, the most important skill is not how to rebut, or even in negotiations. It's not how we can talk back or reply. We need to listen. We need to be good listeners. We need to understand what they're saying. Then we know how to reply. Of course, we have to have good replies. We have to have all the points, but we should know what they're saying first. And especially so if I'm a student. I'm not there for a debate. I must understand first. And if the Supreme Sri Bhagavanu Vacha, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is speaking, we have to shut up and listen. That's why Krishna, you see what he says. 7.1. Many times Prabhupada gave a lecture on this. You see, so many times. Wow. This is so many times. Maybe 15, 20 times. Wow. That's such an important verse. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Maya Saktamanah Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gnasyasi Tachrunu. Shrunu means hear. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Our knowledge of Krishna and our attachment of our mind to Krishna and the dispelling of all doubts can all be had just by hearing. Because he's the authoritative source. Don't try to just explain in your own way. Mayavadis do that. Shravanadi, Shuddha Chitte Kore Uday. Our natural propensity for Krishna consciousness, love of God, will be awakened just by hearing. That's why it is said. Brahma, Lord Brahma also says. ज्ञाने प्रयासमुदपास्य नमन्त एव जीवन्ति सन्मुखरितां भवदीयवार्तां स्थाने स्थिताः श्रुतिगतां तनुवाङ्मनोभिर् ये प्रायशो जितजितोऽप्यसितैस्त्रिलोक्याम्. Received by hearing Shrutigatam. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge. You see that? Throw away. Jnane prayasam udapasya. Udapasya means throw away far. Throw it far away. What is that? Jnane prayasam. The endeavor to speculate about the absolute truth. If you want to understand the absolute truth, don't speculate. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, words, and mind offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees, certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. The hearing is so powerful that we can conquer Krishna. These Mayavadis are trying to not to hear and try to explain in their own way and trying to become Krishna. But we want to conquer Krishna. We want to become more than Krishna. We want to control Krishna. Now, Prabhupada said like this. I am not saying. But of course, a devotee does not like to control Krishna. But a devotee's position becomes greater than Krishna. Because Krishna becomes subservient to his devotee. Krishna Karshani Chasa. One of the aspects of bhakti is that it attracts Krishna. Krishna is attracting everyone and everything. But bhakti is Krishna Karshani. Madan Mohan Mohini. Why is Srimati Radharani called Hara? Hara means, Hari means one who grabs, one who takes away something. But Hara takes away the heart of even the Hari. She can steal the heart of even the stealer of all hearts, Krishna. Madan Mohan Mohini. So, Krishna Karshani. Krishna means all attractive. Akarshana means attraction. Krishna means all attractive. But Krishna Karshani, bhakti. So therefore, one can conquer Krishna just by hearing him. So we want to be controlling Krishna. Like Arjuna, he said, he with his foot was controlling Krishna. With his foot. on the chariot was controlling Krishna. Right tap on the shoulder, he will turn right. Left tap will turn left. Otherwise, how are you going to shout, turn right, turn left? So many sounds are there. The weapons clashing against each other, elephants and horses making so many sounds with their feet and with their mouths, and all the people who are shouting war cries. In the midst of all of that, how is one going to tell his charioteer, go right or left? By his foot. And Krishna was taking the kicking from Arjuna all the 18 days. Now one wants to merge with the Lord, one wants to become one with the Lord. No, no, no. Devotees become more than the Lord. Yashoda Maya, Nanda Maharaj. More than the Lord. Krishna becomes Aham Bhakta Paradhina. He Asvatantra Mivadvija. Sadhubhir Grasta Hridayo Bhaktair Bhakta Jana Priya. Sri Bhagavan Vacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Under the control. Not equal to my devotees. No, no, no. My devotees merge into me, become one with me, become as good as me. No, no, no. They become more than me. And I am completely, not even little, completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cause of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. So to become dasa dasana dasa, we become dear to Krishna and we can control Krishna like that. Devotee does not desire to control Krishna, but just for the argument's sake, that these Mayavadis and the devotees comparing their position, that Jita Ajita Jitopya Sita Trilokyam. These words I am not saying, this Shastra is saying. Krishna is saying I am under control. Brahma is saying one just by hearing one can control the Lord. So these are Shastric statements, not my statements. I am not inventing anything here. So you see, devotee's position is so high. Why we should settle for something lower? And in fact, one who tries to hallucinate trying to become one with the Lord, he becomes one with the worm in the stool. Prabhupada said hellish destination awaits him after death. Ishopanishad also says that. So Shravanadi, beginning with hearing. Listen. Just become humble and listen. You know why we don't listen? We are not humble. That's the problem. Especially when the Supreme Lord is speaking, who are we to challenge? Who are we to explain in our own way without hearing what the Lord is saying? In fact, even in literature, study of literature, there is an important thing that one learns when one learns literature or philosophy. Authorial intent. One must know the authorial intent. What is the author trying to say here? Not just the collection of facts or collection of points that he has made, but what is he actually trying to convey with those facts? What is he trying to convey in those sentences? What is the original intent of the author? So we have to understand the authorial intent. What is the author wanting to say? Not what I want to extract from what the author is saying. Then why I should worry about this author? I write my own book. Why I should give commentary on Vedic literature? Better write your own book. If I am studying, if I am trying to comment on another person's work, I must first understand the other person. What is he trying to say? Don't extract something I want to say from his mouth. That is like putting words into their mouth. Don't do that. So Mayavadis, they do that. But if I just shut up and listen, and just listen what Krishna has to say, then I will understand. So that is the devotional service means. First, humility means stop speculating, stop inventing, just listen, try to understand. That is the only means to approach him, it is said here. Devotional service beginning with hearing. Purport. Mayavadi philosophers are satisfied simply to understand Brahman to be the sum total of knowledge. But Vaishnava philosophers not only know in detail about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also know how to approach Him directly. The method for this is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as 9 kinds of devotional service, beginning with hearing. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnoho, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23. But if you observe, how can we do Kirtan if we did not Shravan first? How can we do Smaranam if we have not Shravanam first? How do we engage in Padasevanam if we have not Shravanam first? Shravanam is the beginning. Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam, all of this will come with Shravanam first. The spiritual master, the gurus, the Shiksha and the Diksha gurus, they do Kirtana. Once they hear and understand, they do Kirtana. And that Kirtana, somebody will do Shravana. And when he Shravana, when he hears, that's when he also gets awakened. And then eventually he will take part in Kirtana, Smarana, Padasevana, Archana, Vandana, Dasam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedana, all of these. So the 9 kinds of devotional service are hearing about Krishna, chanting about Him, remembering Him, offering service to His lotus feet, offering Him worship in the temple, offering prayers to Him, working as His servant, making friendship with Him, and unreservedly surrendering to Him. One can directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by executing these 9 kinds of devotional service, of which hearing about the Lord is the most important, Shravanadi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has very favorably stressed the importance of this process of hearing. According to his method, if people are simply given a chance to hear about Krishna, certainly they will gradually develop their dormant awareness or love of Godhead. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koraye Udoy. CC Madhya 22.107. Love of God is dormant in everyone, and if one is given a chance to hear about the Lord, certainly that love develops. Our Krishna consciousness movement acts on this principle. We simply give people the chance to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give them prasadam to eat. And the actual result is that all over the world, people are responding to this process and becoming pure devotees of Lord Krishna. We have opened hundreds of centers all over the world just to give people in general a chance to hear about Krishna and accept Krishna's prasadam. These 2 processes can be accepted by anyone, even a child. It doesn't matter whether one is poor or rich, learned or foolish, black or white, old or still a child. Anyone who simply hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and takes prasadam is certainly elevated to the transcendental position of devotional service. Um, 62. Okay, 64. Yes. Okay, here also Shrinu, but again, Shrinu, I'm speaking to you this most supreme instruction. Hear this from me. The most confidential knowledge of all. I think 72, is it? 72. He asks. Yes, this is a. Kachideta Shrutam Partha Tvayaiकाग्रेण Chetasa Kachidan Ajnana Sammoha Pranashtaste Dhananjaya. The last verse that Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavad Gita is this. O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? This is the final word, final verse that Krishna has spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, 1872. Have you heard this with an attentive mind? If we hear it, the next verse is the Arjuna's reply. Nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan maya chuta sthitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. This is the result if we properly hear the Lord. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions." That's it. Krishna did not speak anymore after this. The next 5 verses, 74 to 78, are Sanjaya's conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. That's it. Hearing is very important. Hearing. This is in learning. There's a phrase called intellectual humility. Intellectual humility means intellectually we must be humble. We must be humble in all ways, and one of them is intellectual humility. We should never think that I know everything or I know more. No, I should be inquisitive. I should learn. I should come with an open mind and learn everything properly. Hear from the right source. With that attitude, I can actually learn if I'm humble. Therefore, the Gurukul system is he has to serve like a menial servant. Only when he is very humble, then the instructions will come. Pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. If there is no pranipatena, if there is no humility, if there is no seva, simply pariprashnena, and that too prashnena will not become pariprashnena, it will become just challenging prashnena. Pariprashnena are curious questions out of curiosity, wanting to learn, jignasa. But challenging questions are just we're not listening for the answers. When we're challenging, we're not listening. We are having prejudice. We are having our own preconceived notions about what the other person is saying. And then we're just trying to rebut and trying to make them look bad by our questioning. That should not be the intention. That's not approaching it in good faith. If we approach it in good faith, that means we have to have a constructive dialogue. Okay, what is he saying? Actually, I want to understand him. I don't want to prove him wrong. I want to understand him first. I don't know whether he's right or wrong. Let me understand him, what he's saying. That kind of attitude is what is needed. In fact, a student should be more than that. We should understand what is the kind of person I should receive knowledge from. I should not just, accept knowledge from anyone. That may be cheating. Once I identify, okay, this is a perfect source, Krishna. Oh, Krishna is perfect, okay. So Krishna, what is saying? So the Guru, of course, all this depends on Krishna's favor. But the sincerity in us will be rewarded by Krishna. If we are sincere in our quest, instead of trying to show off our so-called erudition, if we are sincere, wanting to learn, student, then Krishna will give us the right Guru and he will guide us. And the Guru will guide us to Krishna. He has to surrender his life to that Guru. You see, Karishya Vachanam Tava. Shai Mantra Siddhi, Prabhupada said in one of his songs. Shai Mantra Siddhi. Karishya Vachanam Tava. I will act according to your instructions. That is the perfection of all mantras. So going back, so we should hear, starting with hearing, then all the other bhakti. Shai Sarva Veder Abhidhe Shai Sarva Veder Abhidheya Nam Sadhana Bhakti Hoite Hoy Premera Udgam. By practicing this regulated devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, certainly one awakens his dormant love of Godhead. This process is called Abhidheya. So he mentioned Sambandha before. Maya Gandha Se Sambandha. Where is it? Se Sambandha. You see, the Sambandha is in quotation marks. That is, it's a technical term. Relationship. Se Sambandha. That is called Sambandha. Here, abhidheya must be in quotations as well, I guess. You see, abhidheya in quotations. Sei sarva vedera abhidheya nama sadhana bhakti hoite hoye premera udgama. So these are all technical. Sambandha, abhidheya, prayojana. That's the framework in which he is explaining Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we should notice the framework. So the sambandha, the relationship of Krishna with everything, that sambandha jnana will be properly received if we listen from the perfect source. Once that sambandha is established to a certain extent, then abhidheya follows. And with the abhidheya, our sambandha becomes more enriched, nourished. And that enriched sambandha will further nourish the abhidheya. In this way, it is very complementary. Okay? They complement each other. And then it leads us to prayojana. Because the more we engage in service, the more our understanding develops. The understanding deepens. So certainly one awakens this dormant love of Godhead. This process is called abhidheya, this regulated practice. Sadhana bhakti. By the practice of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, the impure heart of a conditioned soul is purified, and thus he can understand his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That eternal relationship is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. CC Madhya 20.108. The living entity is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is convinced about this relationship, which is called sambandha, he then acts accordingly. That is called abhidheya. The next step is prayojana siddhi, or fulfillment of the ultimate goal of one's life. If one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and act accordingly, automatically his mission in life is fulfilled. The Mayavadi philosophers miss even the first stage in self-realization because they have no conception of God's being personal. So the sambandha itself is not properly formed. So where is the question of abhidheya and prayojana? Everything becomes, this is called principiis obsta. The first step gone wrong, everything else, the problem escalates. Everything else becomes wrong. Imagine our whole life spent in Mayavad nonsense. It's a great calamity. So principiis obsta, we have to avoid that. So for that, we have to have our sambandha intact. So reading on, he is the master of all. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of all, and he is the only person who can accept the service of all living entities. But since this knowledge is lacking in Mayavada philosophy, Mayavadis do not have knowledge even of their relationship with God. They wrongly think that everyone is God or that everyone is equal to God. Therefore, since the real position of the living entity is not clear to them, how can they advance further? Principiis obsta. Although they are very much puffed up at being liberated, Mayavadi philosophers very shortly fall down again to material activities due to their neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord. That is called patanti adhaha. Patanti adhaha. Yenyera vindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhavada vishuddha buddhayah aruhya krichrena param padam tatah patantyadhona drita yushmadhangrayah. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.232. Here it is said that persons who think themselves liberated but do not execute devotional service, not knowing their relationship with the Lord, are certainly misled. One must know his relationship with the Lord and act accordingly. Then the fulfillment of his life's mission will be possible. Krishnera charane hoye jadi anurag, Krishna vinu anyatra tar nahe rahe rag. If one develops his love of Godhead and becomes attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, gradually he loses his attachment to everything else. Purport. This is a test of advancement in devotional service. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.42, Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktiranyatra cha. In bhakti, a devotee's only attachment is Krishna. He no longer wants to maintain his attachments to many other things. This is the symptom of advancement. Although Mayavadi philosophers are supposed to be very much advanced on the path of liberation, we see that after some time they descend to politics and philanthropic activities. Many big sannyasis who were supposedly liberated and very advanced have come down again to materialistic activities. Although they left this world as mithya, they left this world as mithya. They said Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, but then they come back to the mithya. If they say it is false, why did they come back? Because they have no taste. Param drishtvani vartate. They did not get that taste, so they came back to activities again. Because non-activity is an unnatural position for the soul. Soul is by nature active. Otherwise, we are not even understanding basic principles of the energies of Krishna. What is Aparashakti? What is Parashakti? We are unable to even understand the absolute basics. Parashakti, being conscious, is active. By nature, it is active. You cannot impose inaction on an active energy. The soul is by nature active. It cannot be inactive. Bhagavad Gita 3.5. So, not only because of the modes of material nature, but the very nature of the soul is to be active. So, because they have no taste for higher activities, they just stop the false activities, but they have no taste. They come back again to false activities. So, this is called patantyadhaha. They again fall down to materialistic activities. When a devotee develops in devotional service, however, he no longer has attachments to such philanthropic activities. He is simply inspired to serve the Lord, and he engages his entire life in such service. In fact, he will engage others also in that service. He will convince others to take up such service. This is the difference between Vaishnava and Mayavadi philosophers. Devotional service, therefore, is practical, whereas Mayavada philosophy is merely mental speculation. Panchama Purushartha Shay Prema Mahadhan Krishnera Madhurya Rasa Karaya Aswadana. Love of Godhead is so exalted that it is considered to be the fifth goal of human life. Purushartha, the goal of life. This is called Prayojana. We have seen Sambandha, Abhidheya, now Prayojana or goal, Purushartha, goal of life. Panchama Purushartha. The four Purusharthas usually are considered Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. But the Panchama Purushartha is love of Godhead. Transcending just mere ritualistic performances and economic development, regulated sense gratification, even liberation, transcending all of that to the fifth Purushartham, which is Krishna Prema. Love of Godhead is so exalted that it is considered to be the fifth goal of human life. By awakening one's love of Godhead, one can attain the platform of conjugal love, tasting it even during the present span of life. What's the word? Prabhupada says, tasting it even during the present span of life. That's how fast it can act. If one takes to it seriously, of course. Purport. The Mayavadi philosophers consider the highest goal of perfection to be liberation, mukti, which is the fourth perfectional platform. Generally, people are aware of the four principal goals of life: religiosity, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama, and ultimately liberation, moksha. But devotional service is situated on the platform above liberation. Moksha laghuta krit. One of the aspects of bhakti is moksha laghuta krit. That means it makes liberation to be very insignificant. It renders liberation as insignificant, which is usually considered the most important and the most elevated goal of life, moksha or mukti. it pales and becomes insignificant in comparison. It becomes like one tiny, tiny, tiny droplet compared to an ocean of happiness. Brahmanando bhavedesha chetparardha gunikritah. चेत्परार्ध गुणीकृतः नैति भक्ति सुखाम bodhe paramanutulamapi. If Brahmananda, the bliss of merging in the Brahman effulgence, were multiplied 100 trillion times, okay, that 100 trillion times of Brahmananda, the impersonal happiness times 100 trillion would still not equal even an atomic fragment of the ocean of transcendental bliss felt in devotional service. 100 trillion times Brahmananda is not even an atomic fragment of the ocean of devotional. Just imagine the kind of proportions we're talking about. Therefore, moksha laghuta krit. By the way, for those of you who do not know, Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, the symptoms of Bhakti Yoga are described by Rupa Goswami thus. Klesha ghni, shubhada, moksha laghuta krit, sudurlabha, sandrananda visheshatma, Shri Krishna Karshini. Chasa. So, Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Laghuta Krit, Sudurlabha, Sandrananda Visheshatma, Shri Krishna Karshini. 6 aspects, 6 symptoms of bhakti. We have seen Shri Krishna Karshini. We have mentioned that earlier. It will attract even Krishna, bhakti. And therefore, one can even become a controller of Krishna by becoming devotee. And here, moksha, which is sought after by the greatest of Mayavadis and religionists, moksha laghuta krit. And how laghuta? Laghu means minimizing the importance of it. Guru laghu. Guru means heavy, laghu means light. Guru means strong or firm, laghu means flimsy. So moksha becomes flimsy, insignificant in comparison. So insignificant, like 100 trillion times is only an atomic fragment, not even an atomic fragment of the ocean of devotional service, happiness from bhakti. So in this way, platform above liberation. In other words, when one is actually liberated, mukta, he can understand the meaning of love of Godhead, Krishna Prema. While teaching Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stated, Koti mukta madhye durlabha eka Krishna bhakta. Out of millions of liberated persons, one may become a devotee of Krishna. The most elevated Mayavadi philosopher can rise to the platform of liberation, but Krishna Bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, is transcendental to such liberation. Srila Vyasadeva explains this fact in Srimad Bhagavatam 112. Dharmah projhita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayonmulanam. Completely rejecting all religions which are materially motivated, even to the point of moksha. The Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So, reality has to be distinguished from illusion. Reality and illusion cannot be intermingled. That is called Chit Jada Samanvayavad. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to term it as Chit Jada Samanvayavad. That means Chit means spiritual, Jada means material, Samanvaya means to equate them both, to intermingle them. That kind of philosophy will completely bewilder us. Now, we cannot mix up these things. Reality distinguished from illusion. Don't put reality and illusion put together. That will become a big illusion. What is reality and what is illusion? We need to know that. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. Adhyatmic, adhibhautik, adhidaivik. All kinds of miseries are finished by such devotional service. Srimad Bhagavatam, the explanation of the Vedanta Sutra, is meant for Paramo Nirmatsaranam, those who are completely aloof from jealousy. Mayavadi philosophers are jealous of the existence of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra is not actually meant for them. Although they say that, oh, we have studied Vedanta Sutra, they actually cannot understand because they are jealous of the existence of the personality of Godhead. There is this beautiful verse. It's a little bit not exactly related, but jealousy towards the Supreme Lord is everywhere. Matsarata. Yam lokapalaha kila matsarajvara hitva yatantopi prithak sametya cha patum na shekurudvipadascha sarisripam sthanu yadatra drishyate. My Lord, from the great leaders of the universe such as Lord Brahma and other demigods down to the political leaders of this world, all are envious of your authority. This is the feature of the material world. The reason why we are here in this material world, because of Matsarajvara. Matsarajvara. Without your help, Matsarajvara means what? The fever of envy. We are afflicted by the fever of envy towards the Supreme Lord. And that shows up in the greatest possible manner among the Mayavadis, because their fever becomes so great that they now become, they think they became as good as, they have become as good as God, or they became God. How delusional one must be to think that he is God. That is the fever, that's the Matsarajvara. Without your help, however, they could neither separately nor concertedly maintain the innumerable living entities within the universe. You are actually the only maintainer of all human beings, of animals like cows and asses, and of plants, reptiles, birds, mountains, and whatever else is visible within this material world. So he alone is the maintainer of everybody. Eko bahunamyo vidadhati kaman. But they try to be the vidadhati kaman. They want to do that. The demigods. So the Mayavadis, they want to become higher than the demigod. They want to become the Lord himself. Look at their hubris. So going back. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra is not actually meant for them. They unnecessarily poke their noses into the Vedanta Sutra, but they have no ability to understand it, because as the author of the Vedanta Sutra writes in his commentary, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is meant for those who are pure in heart. Paramo nirmatsaranam. You cannot have this matsarajvara. If one is envious of Krishna, how can he understand the Vedanta Sutra or Srimad Bhagavatam? The Mayavadi's primary occupation is to offend the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. For example, although Krishna demands our surrender in the Bhagavad Gita, the greatest scholar and so-called philosopher in modern India has protested that it is not to Krishna that we have to surrender. Therefore, he is envious. Immediately. This is how we have to notice things. We have to notice. Since Mayavadis of all different descriptions are envious of Krishna, they have no scope for understanding the meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. Even if they were on the liberated platform as they falsely claim, love of Krishna is beyond the state of liberation, a fact stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and repeated here by Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami. Okay, we are at 10 o'clock now, but I think 2 more verses, so we'll just finish it. We'll just power through this. and finish it. Prema hoite Krishna hoy nija bhakta vasha, prema hoite paya Krishner seva sukha rasa. The Supreme Lord, who is greater than the greatest, becomes submissive to even a very insignificant devotee because of his devotional service. It is the beautiful and exalted nature of devotional service that the infinite Lord becomes submissive to the infinitesimal living entity because of it. In reciprocal devotional activities with the Lord, the devotee actually enjoys the transcendental mellow of devotional service. This was the exact thing I was telling earlier. That the infinite Supreme Lord becomes submissive to the infinitesimal living entity. Just imagine that for a second. We actually cannot comprehend the infinity of the Lord. Just look at the whole world and everything He's managing. That is just the world that we can perceive. What about all the stars that are in the sky? And that's just one universe. How many trillions of universes? And that's just the 1/4 of the energy in the material world. How much there in the spiritual world? And the Lord of all of that, Krishna, becomes submissive to an absolutely insignificant soul who is the size of the 10,000 times smaller than the tip of the hair. How powerful is bhakti that it can inverse this position? But that is the beauty of devotional service. That's why Radharani, who is the embodiment of devotion, the word aradhana, worship, comes from the word Radha, who is the personification, the personified worship of the Supreme Lord. That's why she is considered more powerful than Krishna. Purport. Becoming one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not very important for a devotee. Muktihi swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman, Krishna Karanamrita 107. Speaking from his actual experience, Srila Bhelumangal Thakur says that if one develops love of Godhead, mukti, liberation, becomes subservient and unimportant to him. Mukti stands before the devotee and is prepared to render all kinds of services. The Mayavadi philosophers' standard of mukti is very insignificant for a devotee. Kaivalyam narakayate. For them, it's like hell. For by devotional service, even the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes subordinate to him. An actual example is that the Supreme Lord Krishna became the chariot driver of Arjuna. And when Arjuna asked him to draw his chariot between the two armies, Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayamechyuta, Krishna executed his order. You see, this is such a seemingly unimportant verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye. Arjuna says to Krishna, just get my chariot to the middle of the two armies. And Krishna does it. It looks ordinary. He asked his charioteer to ride the chariot between the two armies, and then he did it. But who did it? The infinite Supreme Lord did it. And that is the power of bhakti. In that chapter 1, text 21, the power of bhakti is there. Let's see, it's 21. Okay, let me. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayamechyuta. So you see, 21. There itself you can see the power of bhakti. Krishna is carrying it out like a servant. Krishna executed his order. Such is the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the devotee, that although the Lord is greater than the greatest, he is prepared to render service to the insignificant devotee by dint of his sincere and unalloyed devotional service. Sevam managapikritam bahudhabhyupaiti. He considers the insignificant service of his devotee as very, very great, and he becomes obliged. In fact, Krishna even says this to the gopis. न पारयेऽहं निरवद्य संयुजां स्वसाधु कृत्यं विबुधायुषापि वः यामा भजन् दुर्जरगेह शृङ्खलाः संवृश्य तद्वः प्रतियातु साधुना. I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. He says that I can't even repay the love of my gopis. This he also kind of echoed in this verse. Ye daragara putrapta pranan vittamimam param hitva mam sharanam yatah katham tam tyaktumutsahe. Since pure devotees give up their homes, wives, children, relatives, riches, and even their lives simply to serve me, without any desire for material improvement in this life or in the next, how can I give up such devotees at any time? Now, think about that. Pure devotees give up their homes, wives, children, relatives, riches, and even their lives. Honestly, they should not have had any of these things in the first place. They left Krishna to get all these things. So, to get rid of all those things is actually their original status. They're supposed to be like that. But he counts that as very great. Oh, they have given so much up for me. But those things, they're anarthas and they're not supposed to be even taken up in the first place. What to speak of giving them up? So it's not such a great sacrifice, honestly, if one dedicates his life to Krishna. His life was supposed to be dedicated to Krishna. He, like a prostitute, we went away from Krishna and then we prostituted ourselves to the service of many others. So, if a prostitute comes back to the husband, does the husband say, "Oh, you have left all your customers and came back to me? What a great, chaste wife you are! I'm obliged. I'll become your servant now. I mean, I'm so moved by your stopping of your prostitution that I now think that I, as a husband, cannot actually repay you for your incredible sacrifice." What? Do we say that? No. But Krishna is so kind. So we sometimes don't understand how kind Krishna is. We will understand Krishna's kindness when we understand our rottenness. The problem is we don't think ourselves to be too rotten. We think we deserve Krishna. We think we deserve his attention. If we only meditate on our rottenness, then we can really appreciate the greatness and kindness and the merciful nature of Krishna. What is Krishna willing to do for us? How can he glorify giving up homes, wives, children, relatives, riches? From a materialistic point of view, that looks like a great sacrifice. But that is for people who do not know what the value of what is actually the real spiritual position. But for Krishna, he knows everything. And yet he says something like this. Oh, my wife has returned to me? Oh, wow, what a great job. That would be sarcastic. But Krishna is not even sarcastic. He genuinely loves us. We cannot find a person better than Krishna to love. So, last 146th of the series, last in the series. Sambandha abhidheya prayojana nam 18 artha sarva sutre paryavasan. One's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Sambandha, activities in terms of that relationship, abhidheya, and the ultimate goal of life, prayojana, to develop love of God. These three subjects are explained in every aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra, for they form the culmination of the entire Vedanta philosophy. So he is now summarizing and giving in sankshepa, in summary, what is there in the end, what is the subject of the entire Vedanta philosophy. Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.5, it is said, Parabhavastavad abodhajato yavanna jignasata atmatattvam. A human being is defeated in all his activities as long as he does not know the goal of life. which can be understood when one is inquisitive about Brahman, Brahma Jignasa, Athato Brahma Jignasa. It is such inquiry that begins the Vedanta Sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa. A human being should be inquisitive to know who he is, what the universe is, what God is, and what the relationship is between himself, God, and the material world. Such questions cannot be asked by cats and dogs, but they must arise in the heart of a real human being. Knowledge of these four items, namely oneself, the universe, God, and their relationship, is called Sambandha Jnana, or the knowledge of one's relationship. When one's relationship with the Supreme Lord is established, the next program is to act in that relationship. This is called Abhidheya, or activity in relationship with the Lord. After executing such prescribed duties, when one attains the highest goal of life, love of Godhead, he achieves Prayojana Siddhi, or the fulfillment of his human mission. In the Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra, these subjects are very carefully explained. Therefore, one who does not understand the Vedanta Sutra in terms of these principles is simply wasting his time. So, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving us is the framework with which we have to understand everything. Vedanta Sutra, there are so many things. How to understand what is important, what is not, and what is the gradation, what is superior, what is inferior instruction, what is the ultimate instruction, how to actually have a good understanding of this, how to have a good grasp when we understand through this framework of Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojana. So he's giving us a means how to understand Vedanta Sutra here. This is the version of Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 8. Dharma svanushthitah pumsam vishvaksena kathasuyah notpadayed yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. One may be a very learned scholar and execute his prescribed duty very nicely. But if he does not ultimately become inquisitive about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is indifferent to Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, this applies not only to Mayavads but even our devotees. If one is indifferent to Shravanam and Kirtanam, all that he has done is but a waste of time. If Vasudeva Katha Ruchi, Nama Gane Sada Ruchi, if we don't have Ruchi in the Nam and the Vasudeva Katha, or Krishna's topics, hearing about him, reading about him, if we become indifferent to that Shravanam Kirtanam process, then all that we have done is but a waste of time. Of course, in devotional service, there is benefit to any service, but it becomes offensive and it goes down. But of course, we're not talking here in that sense. Here it is mentioned in the sense of the Mayavadis, but it applies equally to the devotees. So we have to not be indifferent to Shravanam Kirtanam. If class is going on, we have to attend. If we have to read everyday books, Prabhupada books, profusely, and distribute them with full conviction and help others get Vasudeva Katharuchi. So, one may be very learned scholar and execute his prescribed duty very nicely, but if he does not ultimately become inquisitive about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is indifferent to Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, all that he has done is but a waste of time. Mayavadi philosophers who do not understand the relationship between themselves, the cosmic manifestation, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are simply wasting their time, and their philosophical speculation has no value. एमत सर्वसूत्रेर व्याख्यान सुनिया सकल सन्यासी को है विनय करिया. When all the Mayavadi sannyasis thus heard the explanation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the basis of Sambandha, Abhidheya and Prayojana, they spoke very humbly. Of course, this is beyond the series, but you see their response. When they heard on the basis of Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojana, so that means in Vedanta Sutra, you have to understand through Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojana framework. Otherwise, we will misunderstand everything. So, वेदमय मूर्ति तुम्हें साक्षात नारायण क्षम अपराध पूर्वे जे कोइलो निंदन. Dear sir, your Vedic knowledge personified and are directly Narayana himself. Kindly excuse us for the offenses we previously committed by criticizing you. So they became very submissive. So this is how. So I would end here, and I'll take any questions or comments. 8.19.41 gives unique perspective on Omkara. 8.19.41 Aksharam yaditomiti yattadomiti Paragritam apurnam va aksharam yattad omiti yatkinchid omiti bruyat tena richyeta vaipuman bhikshave sarvam om kurvan nalam kamena chatmane. The utterance of the word Om signifies separation from one's monetary assets. In other words, by uttering this word, one becomes free from attachment to money because his money is taken away from him. To be without money is not very satisfactory, for in that position one cannot fulfill one's desires. In other words, by using the word Om, one becomes poverty stricken. Especially when one gives charity to a poor man or beggar, one remains unfulfilled in self realization and in sense gratification. This is Shukracharya's preaching to Bali. But this is not very proper, but it has spiritual meaning because one becomes detached from wealth and becomes attached to Krishna. But he explained in his own way. Yes. Prabhupada wanted to do another edition of Bhagavad Gita because he could not include all the commentaries of the previous acharyas. No, he based it on the commentaries of the previous acharyas, but he wanted to do multiple editions of Bhagavad Gita with other acharyas' commentaries as well. So he wanted to do multiple editions of Bhagavad Gita like that with commentaries of acharyas. Bhaktirevainam darshayati, yes. Three 637. एकांतलाभं वचसोनुपुंसां सुश्लोकमौलेर्गुणवादमाहुः श्रुतेश्च विद्वद्भिरुपाकृतायां कथासुधायाम् उपसंप्रयोगम्. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor, Krishna. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. It's very nice. For us devotees who have no proper understanding about Sambandha, devotional service is just show off. Yeah, it will not be strong. It may be Ajnata Sukriti, something, but it will not last. If you are indifferent to Shravan Kirtan, then we will fall down. We will become impersonal. We will not have a very personal relationship with Krishna. Our personal feelings for Krishna also will not arouse very nicely. Our personal feelings for even the Guru won't arouse very nicely. It won't be very deep. It becomes very superficial and impersonal. And our feelings for devotees also do not develop very properly if we don't do Shravan Kirtan. All right. So we'll stop it there. Thank you very much. Vedanta philosophy ki jai. Finally, we have finished that series. It took us 7 sessions for this section. It's a very important section. You can study it more. You can read it again, and you may watch this lecture series again. So we will make it available as a separate series and as a playlist in the channel, on the channel, so that understanding Vedanta philosophy, this part we can put that as a reference like that. All right, so thank you very much. Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. वेदांत सूत्र की जय, व्यासदेव भगवान की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल, हरे कृष्ण।